So as the TDP of components keeps dropping lower and lower, power supplies are getting smaller and smaller. These little SFX power supplies are no compromise solution. Platinum rated, 700 watts, powerful single amp rail. It's good stuff, and it even incorporates a 120mm fan for cooling. Although I love SFX power supplies, anybody that knows me knows I love even more DC-DC power supplies, because they can be even smaller and allow for greater creativity in building a computer. I've been using these for my business customers and my mods for years and years now. When people see a whole system running, they don't question really what makes it tick, they just know that it is working. But with my S4 Mini chassis, which relies solely on power from DC-DC power supplies, there's been a lot of question and confusion. So today I want to clear some misunderstandings about these little guys and show what they're truly capable of. So one of the biggest criticisms I receive about the S4 Mini is that it can't possibly host enough powerful hardware in order to be relevant for a gamer. Now, everybody has different standards for what they consider gaming power, so I'm not going to justify mine, but rather I'm going to show you what these are capable of so you can make the decision for yourself. This right here is a Pico 160 XT. I recommend buying it in the kit, and everything that I talk about today and recommend will be in the description below. This little guy is capable of outputting continuously 160 watts of power, but that's not the whole story. In fact, the power brick that it comes bundled with is actually 192 watts. Because these little DC-DC converters actually support more wattage than their name would imply. No, I'm not asking you to do anything dangerous. In fact, if you call up minibox.com or the engineers behind them, they're probably going to say the same thing. Now, I'm not going to speak for those guys, but I can speak personally, and I can say that I've built almost 300 systems now using these little guys, all with a TDP of 200 watts and not a single failure. That's pretty impressive because I don't think that my ATX power supply EMTB is nearly as impressive. But what's 200 watts get you anyways? Can you actually build a good gaming system for that? Well, let's talk about an example configuration. Here on my left, we have an i7 6700K, which is an 84 watt TDP CPU. It has 32 gigabytes of RAM and a M.2 950 Pro VNAND SSD from Samsung. For graphics, we have the 750 Ti, which agreed is getting a little bit long in the tooth, but by the time that you watch this video, the 1050 will probably be out, and it's a great analog as far as TDP is concerned, and who knows, maybe even a Mini-ITX version of the 460 from AMD. This little power supply can power this setup no problem, 24/7, 365. Now, what if a 1050 is not good enough though? Maybe that's not exactly what you call decent gaming. Well, here on my right, I have an S4 Mini with a 1060 in it, powered off a Pico 160 XT. Now, I consider a 1060 pretty decent for gaming, but you might not. Now, the only difference between this system and this system is that the CPU is a 65 watt i7 instead of an 84 watt i7. However, if you have a 6700K, you can undervolt it with no problems at 65 watt. Super easy and keep all your standard specs. In fact, many of my users have gotten this CPU down to the 35 watts that the 6700T runs off of, which I think is very impressive. Okay. You hate the S4 Mini's small, compact design, luxury build quality, and awesome portability. I get it. You also think the 1060 is not flagship status, so who would ever consider this 160 XT Pico? Well, there is an alternative. This is the HDPLEX 250. Same for the Pico, the name is deceiving. You're not limited just to 250 watts, although that's a good amount of power. In fact, the two power bricks we recommend are 330 and 350 respectively. So what's 330 watts get you? If I'm thinking flagship, I'm thinking 1080. It might not be the craziest graphics card out there, but it does have a lot of power. Now, I think that anybody might be able to give this combined system right here some respect, at least, for gaming power. One of my favorite teachers would always say, "Show me, don't tell me." So I am going to show you right now. If you're gonna do a Pico build, I recommend the kit. The kit includes the 160 XT, the 4-pin DC jack, the CPU pin power cable, and a 4-pin Molex and SATA connector cable. Of course, it also includes the magnificent Adaptec 16 amp brick. Now the peak on this is pretty cool. Let's say that 99% of what you use your computer for runs flawlessly at 192 watts, 210 watts, but you run a particular benchmark or get to a certain part in the game that's not really well coded and your power output spikes really high, this has got you covered without a reset. To measure power draw, I'm using the What's Up Pro, and I have it set to watts right now. Without the kit, you're gonna get a different adapter plug. And you really don't want the one that they're gonna send you, because you definitely want to use this power brick in the kit, this Adaptat brick, if you go with the Pico. This brick is just too amazing not to use. I do not recommend cheaper alternatives. Okay, so I find the absolute best way to do a stress test of your power is to run Prime 95 and Furmark at the same time. So with this i7 at 6700K, it's running at 4.2 gigahertz right now on all threads, just crunching this numbers with Prime 95 and Furmark running. Everything looks good, and the highest number I've seen over here has been 210. So our little Pico is holding strong. There is not going to be any problems with a brick reset. We are good to go. It's also important to note that I actually had to raise the voltage of the RAM and the CPU a little bit to get the RAM stable, because this RAM it did not want to operate at stock voltages. Now with the HDPLEX, you get a box with a lot of different cables in it. You have your PCIe double 8-pin connector for your graphics card. You have your 24-pin connector. You have your CPU 8+8 pin. You have the DC jack. You have the HDPLEX, of course. You get a cable with 1 Molex connector, 4-pin Molex, and 3 SATA connectors for power. This is an extension cable, I believe, for the DC jack, and some screws for mounting it. Okay, so I've let all of the components get up to temperature, as you can hear from my microphone, the fan spinning right here. And you'll notice that our wattage draw is 332 watts. It peaked at the beginning at 340, but right now we're not only running in a safe range, we're running in a perfect range for this power brick. So without any tuning whatsoever, we have our i7 6700K with more voltage running through it than stock. We have our 1080 without any mods whatsoever, and it's all being powered by this HDPLEX and this Dell 330 watt power brick. This is a worst case scenario. Furmark and Prime 95, I mean, I would not recommend that you run this on your main system. If you want to and you're curious, you can give it a shot, but just know that it can cause damage, because boy, does it suck juice from your components. Okay, so I said we were gonna run a game, but I decided to run Valley instead because frankly, that's quicker for me. The wattage draw, the highest I've seen, was 272 watts. It's run 1 cycle all the way through. It's running on Ultra with anti-aliasing at 8x. So this is more in line to what you'd be seeing in a 3D application. There are some games that do draw a little bit more. MechWarrior Online and Crysis 3 are the 2 most power-hungry games that I have played as far as actually sucking your wattage, but it's not horribly far off from what we see in Valley. All right, I'm gonna shut the system down and we can wrap up the discussion. It's still warm. So the number one thing I want you guys to take away from this video is that these little guys are relevant. And here's the thing, they're gonna become more and more relevant as the TDP keeps dropping and dropping for hardware. In fact, I bet you in a year, maybe a year and a half at most, we're gonna see a Mini-ITX version of the 1080. Now, I'm not saying that these little DC-DC power supplies are the future. I'm just saying that they are relevant and they can give you a lot of creativity when you're doing a custom build or a very small form factor build. Now, in the case of the HDPLEX, it is a little on the expensive side, but you're getting something that's truly unique. Now, if your total system wattage is under 210 watts, I totally recommend the Pico 160 XT because it's super easy, super small, and super durable. It's also not very expensive. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and maybe I cleared up some misconceptions and maybe opened your mind to the opportunity that these little guys can present to you as a custom builder. See you next time.